The two-part interview series will cover all things Black Lives Matter. We're going to talk about the role of corporate America, the role of government, the role of private citizens, and the role of faith-based organizations in moving the conversation and dialogue about Black Lives Matter forward, and even further, what to do to implement change in America.
So it's interesting that I come at this in two different perspectives. One, from my role as being a community leader in Gadsden County and the city manager primarily of the city of Gretna, and also looking at it from the business perspective of the Big Bend Minority Chamber of Commerce, serving as the interim president and CEO. I think the challenge that we've all had in this whole conversation is that we've had a lot of conversations. Those conversations never end in a plan that is fully implemented. We talk about strategies of dealing with these matters as it relates to the concerns that the African American community have raised to all of us, regardless of what community you're in. We have a great conversation, we come away with great takeaways, but there's never any action taken against the plan, or the action that's taken is stalled because of politics or because of something. So on the business community side, same thing. There's a pledge commitment, I know, here in Tallahassee of supporting women and minority-owned businesses, but it's just a conversation. The spending and the leveraging that happens in our community does not happen. We commit ourselves. I mean, the city through OEV and Blueprint have made designated plans to support minority-owned businesses in various ways, but it's only scratches the surface. So what we have ended up in, if you look at it from the government perspective or from the business perspective, is a community that's frustrated because the needle is not being moved. And any movement that is occurring is so minimum that, for folks in the community, they don't see the change. They see government making and handing out all of these contracts. They see what's happening in the private sector of the community as it relates to how projects are happening and occurring, where the development is occurring in our community, and they're just not seeing the progress. So I think that energy is bundled up into frustration that now we're seeing at an epic proportion now in the community with people out on the street demanding justice. Black lives do matter, and there's a commitment. But I think what's different now is that folks are starting to have those conversations in their business community. I had a wonderful opportunity last night in the land here to fellowship with a couple of my Leadership Florida colleagues, and we were talking. These are an Asian woman and a Caucasian woman, and their comments to me were that, really I have now taken an opportunity to ask friends that I work with that are African American or people of color, tell me about your experience, tell me a story, help me understand, help me be a person that can be informed to a degree where I can do something in my space to advance the various issues that people of color have in their respective communities. Now, I can't do it all, but there's something I can do in commanding my space to resolve the issue.
Thank you. So you've captured everything really well that we're going to cover. The responsibility of corporate America, the responsibility of employers, the responsibility of government in this equation, and then how we can support minority-owned businesses. Pastor McGhee, there's also a responsibility, I think, in the faith-based organizations. Do you want to talk about your experience there?
I will. So thank you for letting me be here. And I agree with everything Antonio mentioned. And then from the clergy standpoint, faith-based standpoint, our responsibility dates back, if you look at civil rights movement, you think about Dr. King and the work that he did in the 60s. Whenever he entered into a city, he always convened a gathering of clergy to talk, to pray, to kind of share his plan. Before he did any speeches, he would always do that. And he made sure that everybody understood the mission, the plan, the blueprint. They were on the same page before he went out and gave speeches. Today's time, what you've noticed at times is a separation between community and church. And I think that separation has created some disdain and some frustration. But the responsibility of clergy, and I've shared this with a few clergy here locally, is there's 3 P's is what I've kind of dubbed it. It's pavement, it's pulpit, and then it's policy. And the pavement are those who are protesting, they're walking, and they're advancing the message. And I fully support the protesting, fully support that's necessary. And we've seen over history the result when that's done. The pulpit is where clergy come in, when we all, black, white, any other race, need to be using our pulpit to speak about and speak out against social injustice. I share with people that I believe in Jesus of the Bible, and I always say it that way because you go to any church in the community, you may hear a different translation or different viewing of who he is. If you read it from the Bible standpoint, you understand that he actually stood against social injustice. He stood for the least of these. He stood for those individuals against a system that usually didn't acknowledge them. Women and children weren't looked at in high regard in ancient texts. And so he would do things from his stance, from his influence, that I think we're responsible as well. And then from policy, clergy needs to be actively engaged, as Antonio mentioned in some of the things he's talking about, with speaking out against injustice from a policy standpoint. If you look at from government or private sector employment, you look at the hiring. Do you have diversity on your hiring committees? When you're looking at hiring individuals, those type of things you be aware of. There are some things maybe in a city's charter or an ordinance that makes it very hard for a man or a woman of color to get a serious opportunity in employment. Those are the things where from a faith-based perspective and as citizens of a community that we can be in partnership but also speaking out on. Here's the thing that I remind clergy of. Every election season, 2 years or 4 years, all of our churches are visited by individuals who are running for re-election or for election. They come to our church because they know that our churches house a large electorate, and they want to get a chance to come see them, talk to them, share their vision, their plan. Now, I don't do the practice of opening up my church to giving a microphone to candidates and giving them a chance to do a stump speech. I will let them come and fellowship and worship. We acknowledge them. They want us to hang around afterwards and talk. We give them that opportunity. And here's why. I've been in church my entire life, and I've seen this play out where a candidate comes in, they talk, and they make a lot of promises. Once he or she wins office, you never see the results of that in the city where your church is. And as a leader, I owe it to the people that I pastor, the trust that whomever comes there is not going to sell them something. And so what I try to make sure we're doing is reminding individuals that every day these people have to live in this community. They have to live in these food deserts and these challenges. And so there are people in my church who've lost complete hope in government. They feel like these people do not care about my well-being. And so when government's making promises, as you're saying, making a lot of promises, saying a lot of great things, people are now at the point of, I want to see the results of the conversation. We've talked and we talked and we talked. And the way I sum it up is what my grandfather always said. There's a time to talk, there's a time to put footsteps behind the talking. And so people are looking for the fruit, the results of all those type of things. What's the result of all of these conversations that we're having? You know, if you're running for office or you are in hiring position and you're saying we want diversity, hiring one person of color does not make your office diverse. It means you have one person of color. It's when you start infiltrating your business or your office with multiple people. From a clergy perspective, a local pastor here named Pastor Quincy Griffin, Family Worship and Praise, had a great idea of convening all pastors in this community to take a picture on the steps of the Capitol. We all met together, and it was sent out through a clarion call. Any and all who wanted to come could come. And he also had a vision. We wear a shirt saying we are all equal. And those came. This was for men and women clergy. And it's important to know because historically there are some churches that do not acknowledge women as preachers. I'm not one of those individuals. I don't think you can limit who God uses. But we convened to take a picture, a still image to capture the moment. But also behind that was making sure that it wasn't just a still image of, hey, we're doing this and posting on social media. It's also going to be us committing to having the tough conversations. And let's be honest here. When you talk about race, it's not an easy conversation. Some people don't want to be in the room for that conversation. But it's different between black culture and black individual. And as Jalen Rose said on ESPN a few weeks ago, I really wish white Americans love black people as much as they love black culture. There's a difference. You can love our style, you can love our desires, but do you love us? And I think that's important to understand. And so from a clergy perspective, what I've tasked myself and other clergy is regain your voice. You know, some clergy got quiet because they're so worried about if I say something, what will be the backlash? But I think we have an opportunity to have our voices heard, unified, of course, but I think that's necessary. And being a bivocational pastor where I work full-time and pastor a church, full time, I'm able to see it through two different lenses,
Right.
in the professional arena and in a pastoral arena. And you realize there are some people who may not qualify under the definition of racist. They just may be very ignorant to things. They'll say things or
Right.
gesture things, or they may have the greatest intentions and don't realize history. Fannie Lou Hamer said it best: I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I don't feel it's my responsibility to make a white person feel comfortable about what's going on. I feel it's their responsibility to desire to know better so that they can do better. And I think that's the most important thing. The last thing I'll say is we must not forget that 5 years ago to the date of today, Dylan Root killed 9 people in Charleston, South Carolina in the church after Bible study. That young man still lives today. Those 9 individuals do not. And so when you look at it from a standpoint of white privilege, as a pastor, I had to spend a whole church service talking to my congregants about this, because what happened in South Carolina created a fear of people coming to church in Tallahassee. Are we really safe in church? And so I share that with white counterparts, high and low, remind them, listen, every day we live with a fear of, am I going to make it back home that evening? And so we have to cry loud as often as we possibly can and remind people of the impact. And Black Lives Matter is not saying that other lives don't matter. What we're saying is, don't forget when you say all lives matter, that black should be included in that as well.